Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. So as I said earlier, we are continuing our series of looking at the Beatitudes. We're at the beginning of Jesus' most important body of teaching, the Sermon on the Mount. He begins by calling out these 8 different groups and offering blessings to them. And we've already covered the first 2, and this week we are looking at the Beatitude that goes, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." Now, what does this Beatitude mean? What is it talking about? Meek isn't really a word that a lot of us use all the time in our vernacular. And so what meek really means is someone who is meek is someone who is humble. It's someone who treats people with gentleness. It's not someone who believes that they are better than other people. It's not someone who wants to force their will on other people. And so the Lord is sending this message that the meek shall inherit the earth. And what I think is interesting about this beatitude in particular is that the Sermon on the Mount isn't the first time that we hear this. This exact phrase, "the meek shall inherit the earth," actually comes earlier in the book of Psalms. And so I want to begin our service this morning by going back to the Psalms and reading where we originally hear this blessing from them. And so we're not going to read the whole psalm, but we'll read the first portion up until we get to this familiar passage. This is from Psalm 37. It says, "Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall inherit the earth and delight themselves in abundant peace." Now, this passage, I think, is pretty interesting. It's saying, don't worry about these people who seem to be doing evil, and they seem to be getting away with it. It says, don't worry about these people who seem to be prospering in their own way by doing things that they shouldn't do. And it tells us that we shouldn't be angry. We should forsake our wrath. And I think that this is a natural thing that a lot of us experience, that we look out in the world and we see people who aren't living the way they're supposed to, and it feels like they're getting away with it. And there's a part of us that feels like we've got to do something. We have to find a way to show them that the way they're living is wrong. And built into this is the assumption that we know better than them how they should be living. And sometimes this comes in the context of leaders, that we look at people who are in charge and we say, this person has no idea what they're doing. And we might think, I would do a better job given their position. But the message from the Lord here is that the meek shall inherit the earth. He says, wait on the Lord. Trust in him. And so I want to turn now to a story in the Word where we see this kind of dynamic playing out. And it comes in the book of Numbers. And it has to do with Moses and his siblings, Aaron and Miriam. And in the chapter right before the one we're about to read, the children of Israel are angry with Moses. They've been wandering in the wilderness for a long time, and they feel tired, and they are sick of having to eat this manna that the Lord gives them. And so they call out and they complain to Moses. And they say, why are we doing this? Why are we out here eating this manna? You know, at least when we were slaves in Egypt, we had meat, and we had onions, and we had garlic. We had food that we could eat. And so they call out and complain to Moses. And so he goes to the Lord and says, what am I supposed to do? They're calling out, they want meat. What can I do? And the Lord tells Moses to go and tell the children of Israel that they are going to be able to eat quail. And Moses says, how am I supposed to find enough quail for all these people? And the Lord says, don't worry about it. Just tell them that they're going to have meat. And so he does. And the following morning, there is quail everywhere. It says that they walk around and they are waist deep in the stuff. And it says that they all gather it up. And the people who gathered the least gathered 60 bushels of meat. They had more than they knew what to do with. And so they stuffed their faces. And then it says that the Lord was angry at the children of Israel because they weren't happy with the manna he had given them, because they had demanded something else. And so he struck them with a plague and made them all sick. And so the children of Israel are upset with Moses. They're mad at him because they don't have meat to eat. And then they're mad at him because he gives them meat to eat, but then it makes them all sick. And then on top of this, we learn that Moses marries a Cushite woman or an Ethiopian woman. He marries someone who's not an Israelite. And so his siblings, Aaron and Miriam, look at this and they decide to challenge Moses' authority. And this is where we pick up our reading. This comes from the book of Numbers, chapter 12. Now Miriam and Aaron spoke out against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married. For he had married a Cushite woman. And they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek, more than all the people who were on the face of the earth. And suddenly the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron and Miriam, come out, you three, to the tent of meeting. And the three of them came out, and the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tent and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forward. And he said, hear my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak with him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses. He is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, clearly and not in riddles. And he beholds the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak out against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. When the cloud removed from over the tent, behold, Miriam was leprous, like snow. And Aaron turned toward Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said to Moses, oh, my Lord, do not punish us, because we have done foolishly and have sinned. Let her not be as one dead, whose flesh is half eaten away when he comes out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried to the Lord, oh God, please heal her, please. But the Lord said to Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be shamed 7 days? Let her be shut outside the camp 7 days, and after that she may be brought in again. So Miriam was shut outside the camp 7 days, and the people did not set out on the march until Miriam was brought in again. After that, the people set out for Hazeroth and camped in the wilderness of Paran. So in this story, it doesn't look like Moses is doing very well, right? The children of Israel are upset with him. He's marrying a woman who's not an Israelite. It looks from the outside like this man doesn't know what he's doing. And so here comes Miriam and Aaron, and they have a natural thought. This is a feeling that I think all of us are familiar with, where we look at someone like that and we think, man, I could do a better job than him. Why aren't we the ones in charge? Why aren't we the ones who are calling the shots? He has no idea what he's doing. But then the Lord heard them, and he gathered them together, and he scolds them for acting this way. And he says specifically that the reason that Moses is the leader of the children of Israel, the reason that Moses is the right person to be in charge, is because he is meek. It says that he's more meek than all of the other people on the face of the earth. And that's what makes him a good leader. But Miriam and Aaron, like I said, this is a natural feeling that I think we all feel in lots of different contexts in our lives. That we look out at other people and we have this feeling that I know better than this person the way that they should be living. We look in from the outside and we feel like I could do a better job than them. But what's really dangerous about this kind of thinking that we all do in our lives is that this kind of thinking brings with it a feeling of certainty. And I'm here to say that one of the most dangerous things for us in our spiritual life is the feeling of certainty. Why is that? Why is it that certainty is such a bad thing? Well, think about the story that we read for the children this morning. The story of this temple of wisdom. And in that community, anyone who thought that they were wise, anyone who had this feeling that I know enough, they weren't able to see the temple of wisdom. But only the people who acknowledged that what they know was so little in comparison to what they didn't know, they were the ones who were able to see the temple. They were the ones who had true wisdom. And so when we have these feelings like we know better than other people, there's a feeling of certainty in that. And that certainty comes with it an unwillingness to learn. It means that we believe that we know enough, that there's nothing more that we need to learn. There's nothing that we think we might be missing. And so we think that we know better than other people the way they should be living. But the entire message that Jesus gives in this beatitude, and the message that the Lord gave when he talked to Miriam and Aaron and Moses, is no, it's the meek who will inherit the earth. The psalm that we read this morning said, don't respond with anger. Don't worry when you see people who are living wrong. Focus on doing what's right and trusting in the Lord, because that is what's going to lead you forward. And this feeling of humility, this feeling of meekness is so important for us to be able to grow spiritually. And I want to turn now to another teaching from the teachings of the New Church that talks about why humility is so essential in the way that we worship and the way that we serve the Lord. This is from the Arcana Celestia, number 2327. It says, the reason a state of humility is vital to worship itself is that to the extent that the heart is humbled, self-love and all resulting evil come to an end. And insofar as these come to an end, and truth, that is charity and faith, flow in from the Lord. For what above all else stands in the way of their being received is self-love. Indeed, within self-love there lies contempt for all others in comparison with oneself. There lies hatred and revenge if one is not venerated most highly. And there lies mercilessness and cruelty within it. And thus the worst evils of all into which good and truth cannot possibly be introduced, since they are completely opposite. Now, this passage is saying that there is nothing that cuts off the flow of love and wisdom, of good and truth, more than the love of self. And when we allow our love of self to rule in us, that's what leads us to feel these feelings of certainty towards other people. That we look out at other people and our mind goes straight to, oh, I know better than them the way that they should be living. And what's so dangerous about this is that this gets us really dangerously close to spiritual judgments. You know, I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea that we can judge people on a civil level or on a moral level, but we can't judge people spiritually. And when I was growing up, the way this was always explained to me was it just means that we can never say that, oh, this person is going to go to hell. That's a spiritual judgment. And I kind of like that definition because it's not often that I have that thought about anyone. It's not often that that comes up in conversation, that we're talking and someone goes, oh yeah, I think that person's probably going to hell. So it feels like, oh yeah, we're pretty safe from making spiritual judgments. This isn't something we do. But I think that spiritual judgments are sneakier than that. They have a way of weaseling their way into our minds. And I think oftentimes the most common form of spiritual judgment that we feel towards other people is a belief that someone isn't going to change. A certainty that someone is the way that they are, and that's the way that they will always be. And that may not feel like a spiritual judgment, right? Because we're not talking about whether they're going to go to heaven or hell. But if we allow ourselves to believe that someone is not going to change, then what are the implications of that? Well, if they're never going to change, and we don't believe that they're living the way they're supposed to, then we believe that they are going to continue down that path for the rest of their lives. And then when they wake up in the other world and they continue with the same kind of loves, there's only one direction that that's going to lead. And so this feeling of certainty about other people really is a spiritual judgment. And so our message for this morning, what I want us to take away from this beatitude and from these stories is to watch out for certainty in our lives. Our spiritual task this week is to pay attention this week to when certainty comes up. And it could come up in a lot of different contexts. It could be with someone that we know, where we look at them and we just think, oh, there they go again. Look at the way they're living. That's certainty. Or it could be about a celebrity that we see on the news and we think, oh, what a terrible person. There again, there's that certainty. Or maybe in the world of politics, maybe we disagree with leaders or the people who are on the other side of the aisle from us, and we feel certain that we are right and they are wrong. But this week, whenever we notice these feelings of certainty creeping into our minds, I want us to repeat those words from the Temple of Wisdom like a mantra and say, what I know is nothing compared to what I don't know. Because when we remind ourselves of that, when we remember that what we know is nothing compared to what we don't know, that takes away our feelings of anger towards other people. It takes away our feeling that we know better than other people. And it opens our minds to remembering, oh yeah, there's always more that I could be learning. There's always more that I don't see. And that's what leads us to genuine humility. That's what leads us to genuine wisdom. And that's what leads us to being meek. And the meek will inherit the earth. Amen. Please rise for a blessing.